Bill Wilson, co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, wrote in 1952, "If we examine every disturbance we have, great or small, we will find at the root some unhealthy dependence and its consequent demand." Wilson suggested that if we could identify and continually surrender these unrealistic and unrealizable demands, that we may then be able to accomplish what he imagined to be the recovery's next frontier, something he called emotional sobriety. Flash forward 70 years and join psychotherapists and best-selling authors Tom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger, who have taken up the mantle of exploring Bill Wilson's new frontier. Welcome to Emotional Sobriety.
Welcome to Emotional Sobriety. I'm Tom Rutledge. Today I'm here with our wonderful Patrick Newman, and Dr. Alan Berger he's traveling today. Is that right? Is this a travel day for him?
Yeah, he's been flitting around doing. I don't.
He has
like
been
hummingbird
flitting around.
But I think it's. I don't think it's book related. I think it's something to do with it. I mean, he's always got a few recovery plates spinning.
Well, he's been out in California doing he had actually a book release thing in California recently.
That must be it.
We can't keep up with him. That's the whole thing. Here's the thing. We can't keep up with Alan because he flits.
That's a good word, isn't it?
I love the word. He's a flitter, and we will intervene on him when he gets back, which hopefully will be there for our next episode, right?
Yeah, it'll be next week, most likely.
Okay. Well, you and I have pulled this off on our own before. We can do it again.
I think part of why flitting's so funny is imagining him just propped up on these little wings, it's, yes. A dubious proposition.
That's right. It's something particularly good with Alan. Here's Dr. Berger. And ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for, here's Dr. Alan Berger, and he flits in with his little wings. It's
like a fairy godmother. Godfather.
It's like he would prefer Godfather, yeah, I guess. So well, we have one of the things you and I talked about was this whole anniversary of we're at the anniversary of 9/11 again.
Yeah, 20 years. Which is I'm awestruck, not just because of the resonances that event has taken on 20 years gone, but also that I'm 20 years ahead is any reminder of that demarcation is crazy.
Yeah. Oh, it just gets weirder, man. It's like if you ask people who are getting old into the like Alan and I are getting into where I say we're getting into the place where people say you're into the elderly and go like, well, the truth is we're senior citizens and we are among the elderly. It's we just don't feel like it and certainly don't act like it. But if you ask older people how it is getting older, the one word they come back with is just weird. And so it's like it's interesting to hear from you that basically you already have that experience with that. But 20 years ago, how old were you then? Like
I think I might have been 13 or 14, something like that.
Okay.
I was a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
And I watched it on TV in high school.
Wow. That's let's start there. That's an interesting thing to talk about that day. It's because it's interesting to me because one of the things I remember, and I was younger. I was fourth grade when John Kennedy was shot and killed.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a very I was old enough to where it's a very, very vivid memory, and it came over the announcement in our school, and we were sent home from school, and so that and that was the immediate reference point for those of us, on 9/11, for those of us who remembered that. I think there are different reference points, but it was surreal. So what was it like to be a kid in high school? What were your thoughts?
One of the VHS tapes I had on like constant rotation around that time was Independence Day, that Will Smith alien invasion movie.
Oh yeah.
I remember in between me grabbing my laundry from the laundry room to put on to go to school, one tower fell. I went and got my underwear. Second tower fell, and I sat down for like 10 minutes because I was already late for class at the table, and confirmed with my mom. So wow, both towers. And my little adolescent brain, not too much foundation in like history or context, but even I could tell from those images that this was like world changing, or this was something like paradigm shift, and so then went into school, and then proceeded, I think they kept us the whole day, but in every period we would just we were just watching on TV all day, and it was and I remember, just I walked home with a friend, or I walked to a friend's house, and we kind of hung out and chatted about it. But don't know what to say. I mean, I feel like a lot of us, we just kind of, I mean, I'm not a New Yorker. I watched that great Spike Lee documentary, or at least part one of this documentary he did called New York Epicenters, which was all about, the resonance for New Yorkers, from 9/11 through COVID. New York always seems to get hit with the hardest first when anything happens. So I'm out in Southern California. I'm just like a satellite to the main action happening. We're all part of the same body, and that pain, I don't know. I felt it. I felt the aftershocks.
I mean, well, at your like, I'm just kind of contrasting with I say about when John Kennedy was shot and I was in fourth grade. I think if I had to summarize what that was like, it's like I don't think I had any sense of the world view other than, now we were growing up in the age of where we were being scared to death that the atomic bomb was going to hit at any time, and so I mean I did grow up afraid, living in fear of that. And back when they used to do the videos to teach us how to, when if the atomic war was coming, to duck and cover, get under your desk.
Oh yeah, I've seen those videos.
like that. Yeah, that was going to help a lot. We appreciate it. Get under your desk, and I don't think you're gonna get irradiated.
There's always a little kid named Jimmy, with like a bowl cut. It's like, oh, thank you, Jimmy.
There should always be a little kid named Jimmy. That's right. but in high school though, you're in a different place. You are old enough to realize something's really happening in the world. I kind of just, I know, I'm like everything else we'll go back to doing therapy on me for a moment. It's like everything else in my life, it just centered in my home around my mother, who was so upset and crying, and so that's, I just realized how it impacted my family at the time, and we watched all that on television as much as we could, but yeah, you kind of challenged as an adolescent to kind of put some stuff together.
Yeah, I mean, I think my political life started really then, and the first election I voted in was in 2004, the Kerry Bush election, and yeah, it's just seriously fucked up. It's been for the last 20 years, and it's colored all the subsequent fallout and the ripples, and it's equals me or equals my worldview.
Well, I tell you, let me just say this is, it's like in pretty much what I'm doing right now is just playing this as a conversation we would be having if we weren't on a podcast and everybody was listening. But it's like you have already helped me considerably with this anniversary thing, because I told you in the text before we talked about, maybe we'll talk about the 9/11 anniversary. As I said, I think I'm likely to be emotionally drunk on my ass, because there's so much about our political system that is so troubling to me, and has been for I'm not talking about just this last 4 or 5 years. I'm talking about for a long time. But you brought me back at the beginning of when we first connected just now, and you just brought me back to the moment. This is really an Alan-esque thing that you did here today. I don't, and I don't even take any credit away from your instincts too, because this is probably just you. But you reminded me of what that was like that day, watching this happen. and and you specifically talked about the people jumping out because they were, talk about making choices.
Yeah, that was the
So
memory of that day, I think, if I could pick
yeah.
one. Yeah. The
Mhm.
jumpers.
It's like when you said that, that brought me. I mean, you emotionally sobered me up for one thing. Is we're so we'll stick with our theme here for a second. It's because what now that I think about it, it actually works, because when are we emotionally sober? When we're fully in the present moment. And it's like, and the present moment, when you remind me of that, the present moment, I always say emotions, events happen in time. Events are rooted in time. They happen at certain times in our lives. Emotions are timeless. Whatever emotions we still have are in the moment always. So, if you want to know if you have emotions left from something, all you have to do is, you said that, and I felt my chest tighten immediately. I felt a kind of a little queasy feeling, and just I want to say sadness, but it really was horror at witnessing that, and realizing these are real people in real time who are suffering through this, and having to, and making a choice to jump to their death rather than to have a more horrific death. It's like
Yeah.
and that's what we're part of. And the people, and then you also went back to the the way you put it was, we might, well, the way I think about it, to kind of combine what you said and what I've been thinking is where I went initially in my emotional drunkenness was in my opinions and thoughts about how ultimately leaders responded to all of this. Yeah, what you went to was the present tense, the real moment, where that. So I may be thinking about how we really saw some of the worst, to use Alan's terminology, the worst of us. You talked about what we initially saw, what we first saw, and I do remember this very, very poignantly, the best of us as human beings.
Well, yeah, let me just pulling back a second. I don't know how to help people, or I don't know how to reach people with my doomer. With the doomer side of myself, which is like,
Hmm.
very active, especially over the last few years. There hasn't been any justice for 9/11. In fact, America doubled down on its naughty foreign policy blunders that it could be
Hmm.
argued got us into that mess in the first place,
Hmm.
broke that thin membrane, that was like keeping us walled off from the horrors of demolished buildings and screaming children and smoke and all the things
Hmm.
we saw on that day. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just a Tuesday, in a lot of other places in the world. But I just I kind of see the function of this podcast as kind of, we want to just be present with people, and in real time with you, I'm trying to find the right frequency where we can be of most use, and I know you'll be helpful in that
Well,
regard.
I tell you what, it's interesting. I mean, this is, if we're looking at the present tense too, in terms of just, uh, um, yeah, I mean, it's how relationship works. It's interesting because, I mean, when you talk about the doomer, and I love that term, by the way, the doomer. I'm going like, I like that part of you. You and I think connect in some of that, and um, but I also think we talk about this in family work, family therapy a lot of times, that no two people are going to play the same position. And it's like a lot of times one of the ways we influence change is by changing. What we always emphasize is changing ourselves. And so and I don't know if this is the way it happened, but as we began our conversation today, and maybe through our text, the last couple of days, is like, I'm coming straight ahead with the doomer. And it's like, I think you maybe naturally found yourself in a place where it's like, rather than join into that, you became helpful about that. I'm not saying the doomer can't be helpful, but I'm saying, as far as you to balance, it's a balancing thing. if that makes sense. It's like the idea is you said, okay, yeah, but this and let's take it. And you weren't, and I haven't felt like you're trying to talk me out of anything. You're showing me another perspective that and reminding me of another perspective in that moment of time in which I loved immediately when you were talking about that. I'm going like, oh, okay, I get this. I'm like you with the podcast. It's like we're we're there's nothing namby-pamby about what any one of the three of us do, I don't think, and how we think about any of this stuff. But we're looking for practical ways of helping and helping. And all three of us are good examples, I think, of the fact that we all understand that helping always begins with ourselves. And but the idea of remembering for me today, you've reminded me of how that felt, that because before any of this other stuff, we didn't, I got to forget that I didn't know any of what was getting ready to happen. It's like we watched all these people just move and travel to New York to help. We just, and I knew some people. I have a friend who worked with the Red Cross. He was there, he got there, and he's also in New York. He wasn't living in New York. He was living down here in Nashville with us, but he got there, and the stories that he had to tell about helping people there. And it's like, and in just the frontline people who went in, like you said, went in while the places were still burning, and had to do the hard stuff of I saw a report the other day of evacuating themselves from a building when there were people still in there. And I mean, to watch some of those firefighters talk about that, is I mean, it's heartbreaking unto itself. I can't even imagine what it was like for them.
Well,
But it's like these people they didn't even think of themselves.
right. Well, I actually did think of you when I was listening to this interview with Steve Buscemi the other day, the actor who was one of the volunteer firefighters on 9/11. Right. And one thing that he mentioned that really struck me was he, along with many others that became volunteers in the following days after the towers fell, they were grateful. I mean, they were the ones that were thankful to be given a pail to carry, in the rebuilding or the sifting through, the trouble. And I just found that was very kind of life affirming, just to, that it's a gift to be given a purpose and to be able to like put your hand on the wound and to be given an opportunity to heal. Because I think most of us, the thing we can all key into from that day is just the powerlessness of watching it all on TV. And God, yeah. You're right, just feeling a part of, absolutely, but all at the same time very removed.
Oh yeah, God. And not turning the television off, but I remember cussing at the television after a day or two. Quit showing me this,
Oh, and you know what,
over and over and over and over again. But it's like I was watching it because I needed to watch it, but it was like, oh, it's tough. But yeah, I knew about Steve Buscemi, and it's like I love that, and I'd never seen an interview with him about that, but I knew that he was right in there with the rest of them because he had been a firefighter.
Yeah. And you were saying, in the remembrance, the last couple of days, you felt emotionally drunk. Well, I can tell you who was physically drunk, and that is Rudy Giuliani, slurring words in a 9/11 speech weeks after saying he's not an alcoholic. He gives a wild Queen Elizabeth impression and jokes that he never dated Prince Harry. So I thought that was...
Well, that's nice. So I'm okay. So I'm not the drunkest guy. That's good.
I was thinking, we were talking about 20 years and, kind of not just that particular anniversary, but just the kind of like reminder that, of what's happened in the last 20 years. I mean, if I was Giuliani looking at myself on the cover of Time magazine, on the anniversary of 9/11, I think I'd probably want to drink.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's true. Boy, that even seems it's interesting when you say that. It's like I just realized, which is a bizarre thing. I just realized when you brought up Giuliani, I didn't even initially make the connection because that Giuliani seems like such a completely different human being, and maybe
Different
not, but
man.
it's like, yeah, but I mean, we respected and we appreciated what he did. And I remember him being on Saturday Night Live when they brought Saturday Night Live back, and it was. But see, I think that's it. I think this is it, Patrick. I think one of the things about this is that, and this is where if we bring this, if I look at just in just catastrophes, it's like I also think about Katrina, that came a little bit came later. I wasn't I didn't my wife went down to help at Katrina when that happened. I stayed up here, but I worked with people they brought up from down there to evacuate when they evacuated and stuff like that. It's one of the things though, or it used to be with school shootings as well, is like what happens is when something horrible happens, a natural disaster or a man-made disaster, it's like it does bring out the very best of us. It's like it's a reflex. People go in, people sacrifice themselves, people go in, they help. And then it's like then we get a little time for that to settle in. And and if we're not careful, the fear takes root. I think it's a fear-based thing. And so all of a sudden we become more and more defensive. And I think, there isn't a better example of that than 9/11, I think, in terms of yeah, because for what you've reminded me of is for days after that, the connection to people. I mean, it's like uh I had just published Embracing Fear was about to come out. And so Embracing Fear. So we went into the editor and my agent, we went into a meeting and talk about, do we need to change this book now? Do we need to make it about this kind of thing? And I'm
Really?
very grateful that we didn't. Yeah. Is so, and what I had, and I'm not sure I can credit for the whole shift. But it wasn't much of a shift. It was just like I said. I think we have to put this. I think we have to add some things here just throughout, because the context has changed with fear. It's like, so I think we can't put this book out without recognizing what's happened. But I didn't want to make it because there were a zillion 9/11 books that were coming out and all the stuff was going to come out. So I didn't want it to be that. I wanted it to be the book we intended it to be. And so I do refer to in the book. I do write about the days after 9/11 in terms of doing therapy, what that was like, and how, when every single person was dealing with the exact same issues.
I think that was wise, probably, to keep it more fundamental, and
Mhm.
I'm sure it's aged a hell of a lot better that way.
Right. Yeah, I think it has a longer life that way. But I also think that it's almost like I feel like what I did is I think I just felt like that was that made me feel better as a person to leave it as intended, rather than because one of the things I was afraid of is I like to market things. I like to sell things, but it's like the last thing I wanted to do was to do anything that felt like it was taking advantage of something like that to market something. Now, it probably did help. I was interviewed. By the way, I was interviewed on Fox and Friends by Steve Ducey, uh, 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 in the days and in the weeks after that, because and it was before there was a lot of negative thoughts about Fox and Friends. But
So you
actually, I
had
was on,
you had the opposite impulse Giuliani had when 9/11 happened,
which is, yeah, did
to
not
be
take
to be
advantage. Yeah.
opportunistic and cynical.
Yeah, yeah. It's I it's just yeah, because it just seems so important. It's like I remember now I'm just remembering I was on Fox and Friends, and it was like I was on, and then Tom Ridge, the first Homeland Security guy,
Oh
was on
yeah.
after me. So it was just, and they just had to be on about fear of terrorism and just dealing with dealing with some of that stuff. And it was a pretty good interview. I thought we did all right. Um, so certainly I think HarperCollins certainly did some stuff about marketing with that, but it's like it's not a book about that though, and I appreciate that.
And you mentioned Katrina. I think we could also include COVID, and just in terms of
Yeah, yeah.
these national debacles that, I mean, I think that what we're in now, because it's ongoing. I mean, I think almost every day, there have been as many COVID deaths as there were bodies on
Hmm.
9/11.
Yeah.
And we're still, I don't think we've had an opportunity to breathe yet,
Hmm.
especially now with the Delta variant. And
Hmm.
are there any, what are some of the things from that book that you released around then? What are the things that have only become truer and deepened with time and with this piling up
They
of
just well, they
tragedies?
just I mean, I think the book is so process oriented. I mean, it's like that, and I don't think I later wrote some articles, I think that actually kind of used the terrorism metaphor, but so I don't think that's actually in the book. But I mean, ultimately, the book is about inner terrorism. It's like, these, the should monsters. In that book I refer to it as the generic version of these sabotaging voices as the bully. What remains a constant to me in that is where I start the book, which is distinguishing between healthy fear and unhealthy fear, or healthy fear and neurotic fear, whatever you want to say. But basically, healthy fear actually, is like any other healthy emotion. Guilt is the same thing. Will direct us to become better. We'll do better. It helps us. It collaborates with thinking rather than overtakes our thinking, if that makes sense. It's like it, and so to me, the idea is, I don't know that any of us have ever. I certainly am nowhere near mastering this, but I'm much better at it, which is having our heart and mind work in collaboration with one another, so that it's like part of what I want people to understand when I talk about the multiplicity of mind, is that this metaphor of the inner committee that is, not, I've used a lot, and it's not original to me. It didn't start with me, but is such that it's I want people to understand that working with ourselves, whether we're doing it the way that you and Alan and I are doing with the podcast generally, or whether we're talking about fear of the external environment in the world, is like it always begins. And this is a principle of AA. I mean, it's not the only. It doesn't. AA doesn't have a corner on the market of this, but it's like, and it is that if my way of saying it is, any problem that I must solve, I must begin with the part of that problem that is between me and me. I need to have the meetings I need to have inside my own consciousness. I need to have that, and I need to not, and the reactive fear, um, is will turns, and it turns defensive, and it turns blaming, and that can be outwardly or inwardly. You and I've talked a lot about some of the things we have in common in terms of just sort of inner terrorism is at ourselves. It's like, you know, the way I think about it is blame and responsibility are two different things. They're very, very, very different. Blame is dropping an anchor someplace and just leaving it there. And so whatever boat we're on, we're just circling the thing. Responsibility is about moving forward. It's about what can we do to be better? What can we do to keep moving and be productive? And in the case of the context we're talking about today, helpful, useful to people. And it's like, we're not trying to say don't be afraid. I never trying to say don't be afraid. Be afraid. But look, be afraid of the stuff that is really can be really dangerous. And part of you and I and in our conversations about politics would say that the scarier things are about how people tend to respond after the fact, and how
Right.
people how we would, and I'm not claiming you and I have the corner on the market of what's right politically, but it's like that there are people in those leadership positions who will absolutely take advantage of the fear that comes up and
Right.
get us into wars and get people killed that don't need to be.
Well, I drop a lot of anchors, I think, in my political
Me too.
caterwauling on social media and other places. And, but, in therapy with Alan, who's also my therapist,
Mhm,
when I find myself, because end of the world, via climate change, the end of democracy, these are the things that keep me up at night. And, I spent a lot of time just agonizing over certain questions. And one thing Alan said to me a few weeks ago um, is that he's curious as to see how this is all going to coalesce into an action. And I think
mhm,
that's the question. And I mean, in thinking about the volunteers, on 9/11 that went out
mhm,
there that weren't necessarily firefighters, they weren't picking up a paycheck, but they were
mhm,
participating. Um,
mhm.
what are my actions? How am I going to react to the fear with something that's productive and something that allows me to be a part of the body? And I mean, I'm grateful for this show because I think this is one of several things
Mhm,
that I engage
mhm.
with regularly that gives me some purpose. That allows me to speak to a broader community and kind of like feel a connection there. And you know I think I'm always hoping that more ideas will be forthcoming. Um but yeah.
For me, it's very grounding. The fact and the fact that we're on the schedule we're on, so that once a week you and I and Alan all refer to that. It's like, but it's just something, and this is a good example of that. Just having this contact with you is basically going to make my day better, and it helps me get a better perspective, and I think, and by the way, I maybe this is one of the better things that has come out of this last 24 hours or so for me is knowing that, uh, thinking about emotional sobriety is that, well, here's I'm going to see if I can put it together in a way that I've been thinking about it very, very recently. Alcohol's legal, and as I recall, alcohol was nice. I liked alcohol. It's and there are people, who can drink alcohol and not have the problems that you and I and Alan have had. It's like there are people,
Yeah.
it's not a problem. It's like, so the problem's not alcohol. It's like, it's what we do with it. It's like what happens to it in our system, and what happens with, whether that be neurologically, psychologically, whatever it is we're doing, we begin to make bad choices. The same thing is true for emotions. So what I'm realizing is this does not mean that I can't be mad as hell about what I believe, about politics and how people have responded to this stuff. It doesn't mean, so it doesn't, I mean, it's, my old sponsor used to say, blame's a good place to visit. You just don't want to live there,
I like that.
so I, but put that in there with it, with the metaphor anchor, because it gives it a little bit of a different perspective. It's like, but the idea that it's what I'm doing with, it, with the emotion. And what I realized when I started thinking that way, uh, was, of course, on a walk with my dog. He's very, very helpful. It's was okay. These are fine. There's nothing wrong with emotions. There's nothing wrong with my thinking around these things. There's nothing wrong with that I'm experiencing this. But what I'm doing is, when you talk about action, is what made me think about it, is like, what it's doing is taking me away from the action I need to be taking intrapersonally. I get distracted by it. I get distracted. I get carried away, literally carried away by these emotions. And so that I feel like I'm off balance. I'm yeah, I'm just, if you just, I mean, literally, I love Alan's work around finding that balance, is because the idea that it feels like I'm leaning so far in one direction that it just take a slight little breeze to knock me over. And I realized no. So I think the thing I came away with, one of the things I've come away with, is the idea is a message for myself, for anybody else who's listening who might be able to use it, is that it's, emotions are fine, even intense emotions, but we have to interact with them. We have to, and I'll put this together better as in the days to come, hopefully. But we have to basically be responsible with how we process our emotions. Not just shut them down, not say I'm wrong to do that or right to do that, or just because or just mainly just because I'm right about if I go like I am damn right about this particular thing and I'm really mad about it, it's like that's okay, but that's not an excuse for me to be drunk.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's just occurring to me, and there's something poetic about our war in Afghanistan, for all intents and purposes, ending. Um,
Hmm.
you know, Within the last couple of weeks, we're seeing kind of like this 9/11 remembrance, and then we're seeing
Yeah.
this reckoning with the failed campaign that sprung from that. And
Mhm.
I think that I do believe, in our better angels, and I just think that the real tragedy beyond just the towers falling was the way that um, our leadership harnessed the energy, the kind of negative energy that came from that.
Mhm,
I think
mhm,
I think the rumors are true. There was a moment of national unity,
mhm,
but instead of harnessing that unity for for good purposes, it was used for cynical purposes,
mhm,
for empire, and we're
mhm,
seeing the results. We're wrapping up this war in an ugly fashion around the same time that the bell
mhm,
rings 20 years. And you know I just think that we should all everybody just needs to remember, and
mhm.
also and I'm glad that there's some light that's been shown on this, that we haven't done the best job of taking care of the first responders,
No,
that went into the towers. um there's just there's a whole battery of things that need to be wrapped up in never forget.
right,
you
right.
know
Well, and I think that's right. And I think that if you pan, like you talked about before, if you pan back and look at one of the things that I think where you and I are probably on the same page is what are the ways to actually assess and judge a nation is how we take care of our people. And we don't do a very good job with that in a lot of ways. I'm not saying there's not some good stuff, because obviously, we have, one of the things we have to do to resolve things is we have to not buy into total polarization and basically, just take a side and dig in. It's like we need to have conversations about in the grayer area and the back and forth about that. That's, to me, that's the place I think we were doing better as a nation before, than we are now. But then again, I wasn't 68 years old looking at it either. So it's like, I mean, I grew up in a world when I was a kid. I literally would lie awake at night being afraid, be having trouble going to sleep because I was afraid of the atomic bomb. I mean, and you talk to people my age, I'm not the only one who actually lost sleep over that. So it's like the idea is, now what an adult, if I could go back as an adult and realize, okay, well, that's some pretty messed up stuff. If your kids are they're having trouble sleeping because of that, then it's like us being messed up, our political system being messed up. It's not new. It's just it's a constant, it's an ongoing process. And we sometimes, I think, unfortunately, act like whatever is the latest thing we're dealing with is, oh, that's the thing that's wrong. But I think it's, I mean, I'm not sure I'm even being clear about this, but it's like what occurs to me is this is why I wrote that piece, the little ebook, I have on my website called Therapy for Politics. It's like um, is because that's all about communication. It's like the idea is the solution to any of this stuff is about healthy communication, not about the content of any given time, but how do we solve problems? And in order to do that, we have to have healthy communication, just like we need to have inside our own psyche and inside our own families and relationships. And it's like, it's not different at all in the bigger world. We what we do is we give a pass to politicians, that we don't give to our family members. If somebody treated us the way some of these politicians treat us, if somebody communicated like we would not be in relationship with these people. But we give them a pass, and it's like, oh well, all politicians lie. Oh, everybody does it. It's like that's not gonna take us any place. So part of, I guess, long way around the block, part of the action that I think that you and I are both involved in already is bringing the focus back to that communication.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. And we'll make sure that we put that ebook in the show notes today, just so people can read
Okay.
it. And yeah, just a little word on politics. Uh, my parents were in Texas when the ice storm hit.
Hmm.
Was that early this year or last year? My sense of time has become
Oh,
totally
you got
skewed,
me.
but I think most
It's
people will know what I'm talking about. And
Yeah.
and
I think it was this year. Yeah.
yeah, crumbling infrastructure. They were without power and heat for a little while, and then
Mhm.
recently, my sister is in temporary housing situations in Nashville, moving from place to place, each with COVID outbreaks.
Mhm.
And this is like where the rubber meets the road, where politics actually, you know, this stuff does intersect with us, and it's going to be intersecting with us more and more. And we can't view kind of um, emotional wavelength our emotional wavelength as being completely separate from our political
Right.
wavelength. And
Right.
I wanted to ask you, your program for how to grapple emotionally, and then also how to help people, how to help clients,
Mhm.
is that something that's really, I mean, you've been dealing with this kind of thing since Fear of the A Bomb. Would you
Mhm.
say that it's really, would you say that your program or your recipe for kind of like navigating, was that
Yeah.
something that you had in place like before COVID, before 9/11 even? Like, you just know what to do
Yeah.
when something like this
Yeah. I
happens?
think. I think. I think. Yeah. I mean, that's one of those things where it's process oriented. I think. Then what we do is we take the process and try to apply it to the current content. But it's like, yeah, I think it's very much emotion. I think it's, for I mean, it's very recovery oriented to me. It's inside out. It's like, start on the inside, find out what's your, find out what this conversation is going on inside. And basically it's learning. It's, to me, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you could nutshell it, but it's like, it to me, the thing I think I teach is how, for people, how to represent themselves well. And you cannot do that without people in your interpersonal world if you're not doing a good job with that intrapersonally. And so that's one of the first reasons I put people in touch with these, what I call these inner saboteurs, is because we have to learn to stand up for ourselves, to ourselves, before we're going to be any good at standing up and being the way we want to be in the outside world. Yeah.
I like
So
that.
it's, yeah, no, I think I was talking to you about my first book, Simple Truth, that I wrote in 1989, and realizing through the work with Alan that, that I actually go back and go, I really kind of have a new love for that book, because it has so much to do with what we're talking about here. It's really cool for me to realize that, and I kind of, we won't get into, we'll have a conversation about the spiritual psychic parts of all this stuff sometime, because it's I'm not trying to preach anything here, but it's like, it really tells me that there's something, to use 12-step language, greater than myself at work in the work, in the writing that I do, because I look back at what I have, all the books that I've written, and realize there's a constant process, like what you're describing, that's been there the whole time. And I don't know that I ever consciously, I mean, I have it now consciously with hindsight looking at it, but I didn't start with the blueprint. I just started writing. And so I think it is there. And I do think, like what you said, and that's why the therapy for politics little ebook is important to me is that it isn't separate from anything. It's like it's just we're our relationship to the world around us begins with our relationship with ourselves.
I've been able to endure this pandemic in a sober state of mind while in recovery, while, having, found access to this plethora of tools and kind of starting to actually get that relationship right with myself. So that I just, I was just telling somebody the other day, I can't even imagine what doing the deal at a time like this, if I didn't already kind of have a foothold in, getting my shit together.
Well, buddy, I want you to know this, in terms of what you do, it's, you and I have in common that we both have histories of not giving ourselves credit where credit is due. But, I appreciate the fact that you're looking at that and working with Alan in terms of putting things into action. But you do a lot of good. And I just want you to know that you're already doing that. It's not, you're not in the wings waiting to do that. You are in process.
Well, thank you, Tom. And I hope to continue. And, brief shout out to Michael K. Williams, may he rest in peace, passed away from drug-related issues last week. And just a reminder that we need to stay vigilant and, yes. I guess that's all I have to say about that. It deeply touched me. He deeply touched me in life. And, we're all the poorer for having lost him. And,
yes,
we all need to stay in touch, stay connected. And if we're in a recovery space, just keep doing the deal.
Yeah. And when in doubt, reach out, man.
Yeah. You can reach out to us. We'll put the email in our show notes.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right. Until next week. And, Alan will return just like James Bond.
Okay.
All right.
Tend your life, tend your myth, cultivate your narrative with whomever you're with. Then with glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me. It ain't a crime to be a human. Never be ashamed to be yourself. Rest assured that whatever you're doing will entertain me like nobody else. So here's to us, my old friends, until it's time to drink the wine and break the bread again. With glass in hand and children on one knee, bring some stories, bring your stories back to me.